In Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, you set off on an adventure where you take on the gym challenge, fight against mysterious Titan Pokémon, try to overthrow a team of rascals, and big spoiler alert if you haven't finished the game, but you also become the savior of the Paldea region. But right at the start of the game, you're introduced to your friendly neighbor, Nemona, who is repeatedly referred to as being a champion rank trainer, because she has already beaten the gym challenge, the Elite Four, and the top champion. So surely, if Nemona could become a champion rank trainer, we can too, right? And what is a champion rank trainer without their champion rank team? So, in this video, I'll be doing a full playthrough of Pokémon Scarlet using nothing but Nemona's team, with some added rules. None of the Pokémon are allowed to be overleveled higher than the next challenge's ace, whether that be the gym leaders, the team star leaders, or the Titan Pokémon. I will effectively be playing on set mode, so no switching Pokémon when given the option to after a KO, no items are allowed to be used during battle or in between any of the Elite Four fights, and no Pokémon are allowed to faint. Now that we're all on the same page, let's see if Nemona really has what it takes to become the champion of Paldea. Although 5 of the Pokémon of the team are pretty dead set, namely Pawmot, Orthworm, Goodra, Lycanroc, and Dudunsparce, the one last Pokémon we have to decide on is the starter. And since the first time we meet Nemona, she's petting Fuecoco, I'm gonna assume that much like many others, she loves the derpy look of Fuecoco and went straight for him. So, we get Fuecoco as our starter, Nemona Prime chooses Sprigatito, the grass starter, and poor little Quaxley, well, he gets to hang out with Dr. Clavel. Shortly after getting our first Pokemon, we need to make our way over to the school at Misagoza. Along the way, we can catch our first new addition to the team, Pawmot. After a very lengthy tutorial, we are finally allowed to roam Paldea freely, and our first stop, the bug-type gym leader, Katie. Leaving Misagoza to head to Kotondo, about halfway there, I actually randomly found a shiny Hop-Up in the wild. Now, if that's not a good start to this run, I don't know what is. So naturally, I catch it for safekeeping and carry on my journey to Kotondo, where just before taking on the gym, I catch a Rockruff. After rolling a giant olive around, I get to challenge Katie and my Fuecoco makes quick work of the gym, sweeping all of her Pokemon with Incinerate and Ember. Wow, what an easy gym. Surely the rest of the run is going to be just as easy, right? After Katie, we were going to take on the first Titan Pokemon, Clorf, and on the way, we stumbled into yet another shiny Pokemon, this time a Mareep. Seriously? 2 shinies already? What are the odds? No, really, what are the odds? I feel like they've increased or something. But that wasn't going to be the last bit of luck we need, because since Clorf is a rock-type Pokemon, and in our current team we don't have anything to deal with it, we had to rely on some funny strats. I decided to lead with the newly evolved Crocodile and use Yawn on the first turn. Luck was really on our side, because the Titan Clorf was stuck asleep for 3 whole turns. This allowed me to slowly chip away at its health with Incinerates. It woke up on the 4th turn in time to retaliate, but by then it was too late, and so it ran away instead. For the second fight with our crabby friend, I decided to let Rockruff have a moment in the limelight, as he and Arvin's Shelder were able to take down this oversized crab. 1 Titan down, 4 more to go. But those others will have to wait, because next up was Artisan Gym, home of the 2 FPS windmill. After rounding up 10 Sunflora, which combined might have a total of 30 FPS amongst all of them, it was time to fight Brassius, the grass-type gym leader. And just like Katie, a grass type was nothing for my Crocodile to sweep through using Terrestrialized Incinerates. Brassius' a Pseudo-Widow would have actually been a tough nut to crack because of its rock typing, but since Brassius decided to terrestrialize it into a grass type despite seeing what just happened to his previous 2 Pokemon, meant that that second gem was a piece of cake. With 2 badges under our belt, it was time to head back to the west side of Paldea to take on the second Titan Pokemon, Bombardier. Since it's a flying dark type, I made sure to evolve my Pawmot into a Pawmot along the way. When the fight against Bombardier starts, just like against Clorf, I led with Crocodile to put it into a sleep to let my Rockruff rock throw it without a fear of counterattack. Arvin then arrives to help us out and we head straight into phase 2. This time I switch in the newly evolved Pawmot and he makes quick work of the Bombardier. With the second Titan Pokemon down, we finally turn our heads to Team Star. The first boss from Team Star we face is Giacomo of the Dark Crew. But on the way there, while doing some exploring, we find yet another shiny. This time a Rockruff. Finally, one we can use for this challenge. I'm sorry, old Rockruff, but we need to switch you out. I swear, this could be one of those shiny-only challenges instead. Outside the base, we meet up with Clive, where we learn how to take on these bases, which is by beating the guard at the front gate and then using 3 of our Pokemon to run around doing auto battles. Once that is done, the bosses alert out and we can take them on. Giacomo starts off by sending out his Pawniard, which, because of its part steel typing, Crocodile makes quick work of. And when Giacomo sends out his next Pokemon, which is a car? Is that allowed? I feel like that's not really allowed. We keep Crocodile in to lower the Starmobile's stats with Snarl, but seeing it lower our own defense sharply with Metal Sound, I decided to switch in Pawmot for some big damage with Low Sweep. Although Low Sweep lowered the Starmobile's speed, Pawmot also had its defenses greatly reduced. Wanting to play it safe, I switched back into Crocodile to finish the job. And with that, our first Team Star base was defeated. After our victory, I headed to the South Province Area 4 to catch both a Dunsparce and a Gumi to boost our roster from 3 to 5 Pokemon. Next up was the Levincia City gym leader, Iono. But before we can even do the gym challenge, Nemona shows up to test our strength. It's time to see who the better Nemona is. We both start off with Rockruffs, and we even both open with Double Team, but my Rockruff is able to ever so slightly come out as the victor. Nemona then sends out her Pawmot, to which we send out our own Pawmot, but apparently she taught her Pawmot Dig, which meant we take a bit too much damage, so instead I switched to Crocodile to finish the job. Lastly, a battle between the starters. But even after terrestrialization, Fire still beats Grass and Crocodile makes short work of Florigato. After proving that we are the better Nemona, we can now star in one of Iono's live streams where, effectively, we act as one of her mods as we try to spot old men stalking her and fend off her legion of simps. After proving we are capable of being a competent stream moderator, we are blessed with the opportunity to challenge Nemona herself. Iono opens the battle with her Wattrel and I throw out my Pawmot. Since her Wattrel has wind power and not Volt Absorb, Pawmot takes it out easily with 2 sparks. Next up is Bellibolt, which gets a lucky crit on us, but because of its ability Electromorphosis, which increases electric type abilities after taking damage, it tries to use Spark, but because of Pawmot having the ability Volt Absorb, it instead heals us. A few low kicks later and Bellibolt was down. Next came Luxio, which Pawmot low kicked once before Crocodile took over to seal the deal. But then came Iono's ace, Mismagius. And it was here where the Dudunsparce that we caught earlier comes into play. By switching into the normal type Dudunsparce, we take no damage from the ghost type move Hex. The next turn, Mismagius confuses Dudunsparce, but that didn't matter since we broke through to harshly lower Mismagius' defense with a Screech. And on the final turn, with a terrestrialized Giga Impact, Dudunsparce straight up one-hit KOs the Mismagius. And with that, we have our 3rd gym badge, and more importantly, we get the Volt Switch TM for our Pawmot. Our next target was the leader of the Team Star's Fire Crew base. On the way there though, our Rockruff evolves into a Lycanroc during the day to get the midday form Lycanroc. The Team Star leader, Mela, starts off the battle by sending out a Torkoal, which can be quite troublesome, especially since it starts off by setting up a harsh sunlight with his ability Drought. Because of this, I taught Pawmot Rain Dance using a TM to instantly lower the offensive threat. Once the rain was set up, I whittled the Torkoal down, but before KOing it, I Volt Switched into Gumi, who I also taught Rain Dance. I made sure to set up a second Rain Dance to have as many turns in the rain as possible against the final Revavroom. Once Torkoal was down, I brought in the freshly evolved Lycanroc, who under the rain could survive the Revavroom's attacks. Lycanroc did get burned just as it switched in, but thanks to a Rawsberry, that was instantly healed. And with a few terrestrialized rock tombs, I got the Revavroom quite low. Things were looking a bit scary though, because just as the rain stopped, we had -4 defense from the Screeches, and we were outsped by the Revavroom. But thanks to the priority move Accelerock, we were able to take out the Revavroom and beat the Team Star boss, Mela. Next, we went back to hunting some Titan Pokemon for Arven, our Titan of choice being the Lurking Steel Titan, which, since it's steel and all, means that unlike Iono and Mela, the fight was over pretty fast, with Crocodile just incinerating the giant Orthworm. Speaking of Orthworms though, while we were here, I also caught a regular Orthworm, and with that, we now have our full team of 6, which apparently were all males, which is a pure coincidence. Maybe I should call this team the Boys or something. But with the full team assembled, I set my eyes on the water-type gym leader of Cascarafa City, Kofu. Thanks to our Pawmot, Kofu's first Pokemon, Veluza, went down pretty easily, especially since we got lucky with the paralyzed hacks on our side. But to my surprise, you couldn't tell because of the terrestrialization here, but a sandstorm just happened to kick up too, which I assume is because of the nearby desert. Pawmot takes a chunk of damage from Kofu's second Pokemon, Wugtrio, but answers with a one-hit KO. Now it was time for Kofu's 3rd and final Pokemon, Crabominable, a very scary physical attacker. To keep Pawmot safe, I Volt Switched to take out half of the Crabominable's health while also switching into a bulkier option, Dudunsparce. And it's here where that sandstorm from earlier comes in to save the day. I stalled by cycling Pokemon once again to Orthworm, the bulkiest member of the team, and use some Mud Shots to lower Crabominable's accuracy. And thanks to the chip damage from Mud Shot and from the sandstorm, it leaves Crabominable at a quarter health, which lets me switch into Lycanroc, who dodges the Crab Hammer thanks to the lowered accuracy from Mudshot, and he goes for the win. Thanks, Mother Nature. With Kofu down, we turn our attention to the boss of the poison base, Atticus, who kinda looks like he got way too obsessed with playing Splatoon over the weekends. In preparation, I evolved my Dudunsparce into Dudunsparce. Unfortunately, it was only the 2-segment version though. Thanks to our Orthworm having a great combination of a steel typing and the Earth Eater ability, it makes poison and ground types useless against it. That meant it could easily take on Atticus' Skuntank, Revavroom, and Muck. But once the Starmobile came out, I had to be a bit more cautious since I knew it knew Flame Charge, and it also had the ability Toxic Debris, which sets out poison spikes whenever it is hit. So to prepare, I tried lowering its defenses with Crocodile and Dudunsparce, only to bring out Orthworm back in to take out the Starmobile. Even though the Flame Charges were hitting us for super effective damage, Orthworm has the highest physical defense on our team and is very bulky. so it was able to survive long enough to take out the Starmobile with some bulldozers. Our next obstacle was Larry, the normal type gym leader of Medali. In preparation, I evolved Crocodile into Skeledirge, which gave us an extra ghost typing, and with that, I was ready to challenge Larry. Admittedly, I did have to brute force my way through the riddle, but let's just ignore that. I started off with Lycanroc, my strongest attacker, to chunk out Larry's Komala. I didn't want to use Pawmot because even though it is a fighting type, it has incredibly low physical defense. So to avoid falling asleep from the yawn, I switch into Orthworm instead to finish the Komala. We get yawned once again, so Orthworm did fall asleep, and so I decided it was time for the Dudunsparce mirror match. Our Dudunsparce got off a single Hyper Drill to do some decent damage, but the paralysis from glare meant that we had to switch out into Skeledirge. Thankfully, because of the new ghost typing, we were immune to a Hyper Drill. This allowed Skeledirge to set up using 2 Torch Songs which both increased their special attack once each. Thanks to the boosted special attack, Skeledirge simply one-shotted Larry's ace, the Staraptor. Immediately after the gym battle though, we have to fight against Nemona Prime once again. The fight starts off with both of our Lycanrocs, but mine is faster and I get a flinch from Rock Slide, taking out the opposing Lycanroc with ease. Next up is Goomy, and that falls just as easily. Maybe that's the power of the shiny difference, baby. Nemona's third Pokemon though was Pawmot, which Lycanroc couldn't deal with, so instead I sent out Orthworm, who dunks on Pawmot all while dodging all of its attacks. Last but not least is Meowscarada. I mean, considering she willingly chose the Pokemon weak to our starter, is it really a surprise that a single Torch Song from Skeledirge would easily take it out? After Larry, we headed up into the snowy Glaciado mountain to take on the Montenevera ghost-type gym leader, Ryan. The only gym battle in Paldea that is a double battle, and since it is a double battle, that made this gym very easy since both Skeledirge and Lycanroc both had good moves that were spread types, namely Snarl and Rock Slide. They also had some good single target super effective moves like Shadow Ball and Bite. After terrestrializing Skeledirge to get rid of its ghost typing, it was simply a matter of sweeping Rhyme's entire team with just those 2. With our 6th gym badge collected, it was time to take on yet another Titan, this time the Quaking Earth Titan, which, since this is the Scarlet version of the game, means that we were taking on the Great Tusk. On the way there though, our Goomy evolves into a Sliggoo. So we start off the fight with Dudunsparce, who tanks a hit to get a yawn off, to put the Great Tusk to sleep. I'm starting to sense a theme here of putting everything to sleep for the big titans. After the yawn, it was time for our newly evolved Sliggoo to help out by harshly reducing the titan's special defense with an acid spray. Thanks to the lower defense, Skeledirge could now come in and one-shot the Great Tusk with a Torch Song. All the while, it was all asleep. For phase 2, with Arven's Scavillain as a meat shield, we could just have Skeledirge use Torch Song without any lower defenses to take it out. And with that, that was 4 titans down. But despite being one step away from helping Arven's Mabosta recover, it'll have to wait because we have a gym to take on. Specifically, the Psychic-type gym leader Tulip in Alphanada, which I will say, Alphanada has got to be one of my favorite cities just because of these cute little pixel arts, which are homages to the sprites from earlier generations. Just before we take on the gym though, we once again have to take on Nemona Prime, and just like last time, this went by without a sweat. With our shiny Lycanroc winning the mirror match, and Orthworm taking out her Sliggoo, and Skeledirge one-shotting both her evolved Pawmot and her Meowscarada. Tulip herself wasn't that much more difficult either, since I taught Flame Charge to Skeledirge. This is a move that increases your speed by 1 stage every time you use it. This allowed Skeledirge to set up against Tulip's Farigiraf at the start of the battle, even though it tried to set up a Reflect, which lowers the damage done by physical moves, but that's fine though, because Skeledirge won't be using any physical moves beyond that initial Flame Charge. Farigiraf goes down to 2 Torch Songs, which increase our special attack by 2 stages as well. And with a buffed up Skeledirge like this, the rest of Tulip's team was easily swept thanks to Skeledirge's Shadow Balls. As in the move Shadow Ball, not like, you know what, let's just get to the next gym, which is back in the snowy Glaciado mountain to take on Grusha, the ice-type gym leader. Just before taking on the gym leader, our Pawmot finally evolves into a Pawmot, but that doesn't really matter because the only Pokemon we use to defeat Grusha is good old Skeledirge. It's a good thing that this battle is in the snowy mountains so that Grusha is familiar with what a snowball is, because that is exactly what Skeledirge did by one-hit KOing all of Grusha's Pokemon, each time increasing its stats more and more with a Torch Song. And with that, we have all 8 gym badges, ready to do the champion assessment. But before that, we do have some loose ends to tie up. Firstly, the Fairy-type Team Star boss, Ortiga. Since Ortiga decided to start the battle off with an Azumarill, which is part Water type, it meant that our Pawmot could easily take it out, and from there on, the only 3 Pokemon left were all Fairy physical attackers. Who better to sweep them than our big goofy boy, Orthworm, who because of his steel typing was resistant to all of their attacks. Now that our Pokemon are finally starting to get trained up with proper EVs and gotten better stats, things are starting to look a little bit better compared to what it was like at the start of the game. Our final Titan Pokemon, or Pokemons, or no wait, the plural of Pokemon is still Pokemon, so it's still the Titan Pokemon. Anyway, the final Titan is the False Dragon Titan, which is actually the Dondozo-Tatsugiri combo. Dondozo, being pure water, meant that Pawmot could easily take it on all alone, but Tatsugiri, being part dragon, made things slightly more troublesome. So after Pawmot got a nice paralyze onto the Tatsugiri, I had Dudunsparce seal the deal. And with that, we gathered all 5 of the Herba Mystica that Arvin was looking for to help his Mabostiff recover. And I totally didn't cry. Don't ask me why my eyes are watering up. Let's just move on to the final team star boss. Eri. Eri is a trainer who specializes in fighting types, and unfortunately, we don't really have anything in the team that can deal super effective damage to fighting types. However, what we do have is a Skeledirge, who was able to increase its speed twice on Eri's opening Toxicroak. After that, it was off to the races, with non-stop torch songs, each one stronger than the last, one-shotting all of her Pokemon. I'd like to point out, by the way, that our Skeledirge has an impish nature, which means that it actually has lower special attack. But that didn't stop it from sweeping Eri's team. With all of the stories out of the way, it was time to take on each of their finales. First, I evolved Sliggoo into Goodra to give it a nice boost in stats and finally round out our team, and with that, we were off to the champion assessment. I'll be honest, I actually had a little bit of trouble during the champion quiz because I could not remember any of the city names except for Iono and Levencia, so thankfully that was a gimme. The first member of the Elite Four is Rika, who specializes in ground-type Pokemon. And you know what loves ground types? Orthworm, with Earth Eater. To start things off, I had Dudunsparce take out her Wish Cache using some Hyperdrills. And then, when she sent out her Camera Up second, that was an easy KO with a quad-effective Aqua Tail from Goodra. Before switching Orthworm in, I wanted to let Goodra get an Aqua Tail onto Rika's Donphan, but I severely underestimated how much damage it would do with an Earth Power, which leaves Goodra quite low. And since I'm not healing in between fights, this pretty much left Goodra out for any of the next Elite Four fights. In hindsight, I should have switched into Orthworm instantly to have Earth Power heal him instead. With nothing but ground physical attackers left, it was time to let the Orthworm loose and Iron Head his way to the next Elite Four member, Poppy. Poppy's specialty is Steel type Pokemon, which is very unfortunate for her because you know what is strong against Steel types? Yeah, Fire. You know what Fire type Pokemon we have on our team? Skeledirge. Her Copperajah opened up by setting up Stealth Rocks, but trust me, this was the one Pokemon show was Skeledirge. The only other Pokemon who could even put up a fight was Magnezone, and that's because it had Sturdy. It tried to set up a light screen, but by then it was too little and too late, and everything just melted to Skeledirge's Torch Song. A flawless victory for our Skeledirge, not taking a single hit in battle. And you know what? Might be controversial, but I'm gonna say it. Maybe they shouldn't be having children in the Elite Four. If you thought that sweeping one member of the Elite Four with a single Pokemon was crazy, wait till you see what Lycanroc did to Larry's flying team. Thanks to one of the new held items introduced in Gen 9 called the Loaded Dice, it ensures that multi-hit moves always hit at least 4 times. And with a move like Rock Blast, which has a base power of 25 per hit, that means that once terrestrialized, Lycanroc could take out every single one of Larry's Pokemon in a single hit. Or well, multiple hits, since it's like Rock Blast, a multi-hit move, so technically speaking, it's one attack but multiple hits, you know what I mean. And that was even through a lowered attack because of Staraptor's ability Intimidate. The only one of Larry's Pokemon that would have been not weak to fighting was Flamigo, because its second type was fighting. But because Larry terrestrialized it into a pure flying type, it got rid of that resistance. You know what, Larry? As a tired, overworked salaryman, maybe I understand why. Maybe you just wanted to get this over and done with, so you were like, just end this. Let me terrestrialize my final Pokemon, make it weak, just get me out of here. Last but not least was Hassel, which is a fitting name considering how much more of a hassle he was compared to the rest of the Elite Four. Hassel is a Dragon type specialist, but unlike Lance, he actually has a good team and not just 3 Dragonites. His starting Pokemon, Noivern, was actually faster than our Lycanroc, but we were still able to set up spikes and KO the Noivern. But our Lycanroc took quite the beating. Here's where things get complicated. Next up was Dragalge, a very strong special attacker, and our only 2 bulky special defenders were weakened in the fights against Rika, and since we weren't healing in between battles, they were still low. But Dudunsparce had just enough HP to tank 1 hit and let me switch into Orthworm practically for free, since Dragalge was baited into using Sludge Bomb, a poison type move against Dudunsparce, which had no effect on the Orthworm that switched in. Orthworm was able to take out the Dragalge, but next up was Haxorus. Another issue because our physical wall, Orthworm, just took huge damage from the previous Dragalge. We were able to get some damage off with Orthworm before having to make another pivot switch into Pawmot, who tanked the Dark type Crunch. Now, since Pawmot is out, Haxorus won't want to use the not very effective Crunch move against it. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch in Skeledirge, where the crunch would have been super effective. So instead, Haxorus uses Dragon Claw, meaning that Skeledirge takes reduced damage. But now that the Ghost type Skeledirge is out, Haxorus will once again want to use the Ghost type Crunch for super effective damage. So I Terrastalize to get rid of that weakness, allowing Skeledirge to tank yet another hit and get off a flame charge. With the increased speed, it was time to start stacking the special attack buffs with Torch Song. Once Haxorus was down, next up was Flapple, which is a good thing that it looks like an apple since that was all it was. It was literally nothing but food to buff up a Skeledirge even more. Finally was Baxcalibur, Hassel's ace, who surely could have swept the entire team, but thanks to the combined efforts of the entire team, the Stealth Rock from Lycanroc, the pivots allowing Skeledirge to get in with reduced damage and survive, allowed Skeledirge to get off a single Shadow Ball that sealed the deal. And with that, Hassel, the last of the Elite Four, was down. With our Pokemon fully restored, it was time to take on the top champion, Geeta. She starts off with an Espathra, which would be quite a threat because of its signature move, Lumina Crash, which harshly lowers her special defense, almost guaranteeing a 2-hit kill. But our trusty Lycanroc is able to outspeed it and take it out with some crunches. Unfortunately for Geeta, her next 4 Pokemon are pretty much a joke. She sends out Avalugg next, and I pivot into the one and only Skeledirge, who isn't affected by Avalugg's body press. Then, I Terrastalize to get rid of the ghost typing and start the setup. First, a Flame Charge to increase speed, and then I let Skeledirge sing. This takes out the Avalugg, followed by the Part Steel King Gambit, then the Go-Goat, and next up was the Veluza, which came out, and despite it being a water type, unfortunately, it is also part Psychic, which meant that a Shadow Ball was super effective against it. Finally, Geeta sent out her final ace, Glamora, but by then, it was too late for it to survive a +4 Shadow Ball from our Skeledirge. And with that, we passed the assessment and became a champion ranked trainer. It's kinda hard to believe that the top champion Geeta is so easy to beat. Honestly, Hassel was more of a champion than you, Geeta. Immediately after that, Nemona comes out to challenge us, and as much as I'd like to prove that we are the better Nemona, we need to finish up some other storylines first. After becoming champion, I went back to where it all began, Naranja Academy, to face off against Clavel, who, to the surprise of absolutely no one, admits to being Clive. He also confesses to being Cassiopeia, which did actually kind of surprise me. I was not expecting that. And so, he then challenges us to a battle. As always, leading with Lycanroc leads to an opening knockout against his Oranguru. After that, Clavel sends out his Abomasnow, a grass ice type, which is 4 times weak to fire. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson? Naturally, I send out Skeledirge. After Abomasnow though, for some reason, he decides to send out his Poltegeist, who is also weak to a +2 Shadow Ball from Skeledirge. Only after this does he decide to finally throw out his Houndoom, who has Flash Fire. This would have been the one to send out after your Abomasnow, not the Poltegeist, but you know what, it's happened, it's in the past, it's whatever. Since Skeledirge couldn't handle the Houndoom, I sent in Goodra, who got a lucky crit to one-shot the Houndoom. Next was Amoonguss, which I answered by sending out Skeledirge yet again. A Torch Song left Amoonguss with a sliver of health, but that's actually a good thing, because once it put Skeledirge to sleep, I switched into Dudunsparce, who is immune to the follow-up Hex. Dudunsparce can then take out Amoonguss, meaning that I have a full health, bulky Pokemon ready for Clavel's final Pokemon, Quaquaval. Dudunsparce gets it down to half health while tanking a super effective Brick Break. The fact that Dudunsparce is normal is good because Quaquaval is baited into using Brick Break again, the fighting type move, instead of Aqua Step, which would increase its speed. Because of this, I can switch into Pawmot, who tanks another Brick Break and is fast enough to KO the Quaquaval with a Spark, since it doesn't have increased speed yet. Once we beat him, Director Clavel reveals to us that he actually wasn't Cassiopeia and the real one is still waiting for us. But first, let's check up on our old friend Arvin, shall we? Back in the lab, Arvin's mother, Professor Sutter, reveals to us that she needs help, specifically our help, down in Area 0. In order to prepare, Arvin decides to battle us. He starts off the battle with a Greedent against my Pawmot, but that wasn't for long because I instantly Volt Switch Orthworm in to tank the Earthquake from Greedent. After that, because of how physically bulky Orthworm is, the Greedent couldn't do anything and was slowly taken out by Iron Heads. Next was Scovillain, the dual grass fire type. So I switched in Goodra to take it out with some Dragon Pulses. After that was Garganical, another physical attacker, which meant it was once again time for Orthworm to come out. It did have a super effective move in Body Press, but thanks to leftovers and some iron defenses, Orthworm was able to Earthquake Garganical down while staying relatively healthy. After that was Toadscroll, which, the poor thing, had it gone up against anything other than Earthworm, it maybe would have had a chance. But Orthworm resisted 2 of its moves, Earth Power and Sludge Bomb, and with one of its moves being Spore, The only damaging move left was a measly Power Whip, which did so little damage that Orthworm actually ended up gaining HP per turn because of leftovers. Once Toadstool was down, Cloyster was up next. A Shed Tail allowed Dudunsparce to get in for free, and once in, it could take out Cloyster pretty comfortably with Hyper Drill. Last was Mabostuff, and once again I had to use some pivots and Terrestrialize shenanigans to take it out. First, I instantly switched into Pawmot, who resisted the Dark type Crunch because of its fighting type. Expecting what would be a super effective Fairy type rough play though, I Terrestrialized to get rid of the fighting type to survive through it and get Mabostuff low to get a KO on the following turn. And with that, the Path of Legends was complete. Next on the agenda was Operation Starfall, where we take on the real Cassiopeia, who turns out to be none other than Penny. Turns out the spooky big bad guy behind the screen was just a shy little shut-in, which kinda reflects society, don't you think? Anyway, Penny's team consisted of purely evolutions, the first of which was the Dark type Umbreon, which Pawmot could take out pretty easily with a close combat. Next up was Flareon. Pawmot volt switched out to bring in Lycanroc, who got the KO with Rock Blast. After that, it was time for Vaporeon, who scared me, not because of the Copy Pasta, but because of how strong its stab Hydro Puff is. So, I pivoted Goodra in to tank it, and because of the Dragon typing, this baited Vaporeon into using the much weaker Aurora Beam. This allowed me to switch Pawmot back in to survive, and after that Pawmot scored another knockout with a double shock. The Grass type Leafeon was next, and this let me Volt Switch Goodra back in to negate the damage from Leaf Blade because of Goodra's ability, Sap Sipper. From there, Goodra could Dragon Pulse Leafeon down as well as the following Jolteon. The resistances to Electric and Grass as well as the high special defenses let Goodra hang on through both, even through a paralysis against Jolteon. Last was the Fairy type Sylveon. Switching Orthworm in was a no-brainer as its Iron Head did super effective damage, but because of Sylveon's ability Q-Charm, this left Orthworm charmed. Not wanting to risk missing, I switched into Dudunsparce to finish things up with a Hyper Drill. And with that, the dorky band of fools known as Team Star were reunited and had a happy ending. All that was left to do was to find out who is the better Nemona. The battle started off with a Lycanroc mirror match at the start. I decided to set up Stealth Rocks with my Lycanroc, but Nemona went on the offensive right from the start. I know how physically strong Lycanroc can be, so I switched into the wall, Orthworm, who set up with Iron Defense before one-shotting Nemona's Lycanroc. Nemona's second Pokemon was Pawmot. And even though I knew it would have a super effective fighting type move against Orthworm, I was confident in its boosted defenses to tank the hit, and it did, allowing for an Earthquake to take out Pawmot. Up next was the Orthworm face-off. Now, being somewhat of an Orthworm expert myself, I know that there's only one thing on our team who can deal with this, and that's a fire type special attack, which we just so happen to have with Skeledirge. After Skeledirge one-shots Orthworm with Torch Song, Nemona sent out Goodra. I decided to keep Skeledirge in to get some usage out of the +2 boost for a Shadow Ball, and Skeledirge nearly gets taken out by Muddy Water. So after that, I switched in my own Goodra. A battle between the dragons. But thanks to Skeledirge's Shadow Ball getting it low, our Goodra came out on top after they traded Dragon Pulses. It was kinda like Dragon Ball Z, where Gohan and Cell are both Kamehamehaing each other. But thanks to the power of friendship, our Goodra came out on top. Next was Nemona's Dudunsparce, and apparently, she had a 3-segment form, which I am definitely not jealous of. I mean, so what if hers is bigger than mine? It's not about the size of the Dudunsparce, it's about how you use it. Besides, after seeing such a big Dudunsparce, all I had to do was switch in Pawmot, who would take it out with a single close combat. But finally, it was time for Nemona's final Pokemon, Meowscarada. I thought Pawmot would outspeed it, so I was going to Volt Switch into Dudunsparce, but I was wrong. Very wrong. Thankfully, Meowscarada missed its play rough, letting us switch into our own final Pokemon for free essentially. With Dudunsparce being at near full health, it could tank one crit from Flower Trick while getting off some big damage thanks to a super effective Hurricane. I nearly switched back into Orthworm before realizing that with how fast and strong Meowscarada is, I wouldn't be able to get a hit in. Thankfully, I stopped myself and instead, knowing it would use the Grass type Flower Trick again, I switched into Goodra who took no damage. And now that a Dragon type was on the field, it baited Meowscarada into using Play Rough, the Fairy type move, which now let me switch into Orthworm to take minimal damage because of its resistances. This meant that Orthworm could survive the next Flower Trick and go for the win with one final body press. And just like that, in the final Nemona showdown, we proved that we are the superior Nemona, and that we know her team better than Nemona herself. Honestly though, I think Orthworm is the highlight of the team. Having that great physical defense and the combo of steel typing with Earth Eater means the only real way to do decent damage is to have a fire type special attacker, which we thankfully did have. If we didn't pick Fuecoco at the start, I honestly don't know how we would have done it, since the only other special attacker in this team is Goodra. But if you've played the game before, you would know that there is still one title higher than the champion of Paldea, and that's the savior of Paldea. which means defeating the AI Professor Sada in the final boss fight down in Area 0. The Professor starts off with a Slitherwing, a bug fighting type, which means I can use Dudunsparce to get off a 4 times effective Hurricane. But that didn't one-shot, and I was worried that Slitherwing would knock out Dudunsparce with a super effective low speed. So I switched into Pawmot to finish the job with a Spark. The next Paradox Pokemon was Screamtail. Being a purely physical attacker and not even a strong one at that, I could let Orthworm duke it out with Iron Head, even tanking the super effective Drain Punches. Once Screamtail was out, next up was Brute Bonnet. I switched into Skeledirge but take a big hit from its Dark type payback, so I make sure to Terrestrialize into Pure Fire to survive the following Sucker Punch, before one-shotting the prehistoric Amoonguss. Next was Sandy Shocks, a special attacker, which meant it was time for Goodra to shine. Goodra actually gets lucky with a critical hit, but because Sandy Shocks is spamming Earth Power, I don't finish it off with another Aqua Tail, and instead, I switch into Orthworm to get some healing done because of the Earth Eater ability. But by the time that Sandy Shocks does go down, Orthworm is back to the same health it was when it came in because Sandy Shocks is using Flash Cannon. However, the reason I wanted Orthworm in now is because Sada's next Pokemon is Fluttermane, which is incredibly fast and is a very strong special attacker with a fire type move in Mystical Fire. Since Orthworm is out, Fluttermane is baited into using Mystical Fire, which lets me switch into Lycanroc, reducing the damage significantly. Fluttermane is so fast that it actually outspeeds our Lycanroc to do huge damage with the Shadow Ball, but thanks to a lucky crit during Rock Blast, Lycanroc can one-shot the Fluttermane. Even if we didn't get that crit though, and we didn't one-shot the Fluttermane, we did have a priority move in Accelerock to clean it up next turn anyway. Sada's final Pokemon was Roaring Moon, which came in with a boosted attack already because of its booster energy. Because we have Lycanroc out right now, it baits Roaring Moon into using Earthquake, which means we can switch into Orthworm for some free healing yet again. And thanks to that extra health, it buys Orthworm just enough time to set up with an Iron Defense before using Body Press to one-shot AI Sada's final Pokemon. And with that, we have successfully become the true hero of Paldea, using nothing other than the same team as champion Nemona. Honestly, that just goes to show that Nemona's team is actually pretty good. If Nemona's AI was a bit better, it would have made for some really difficult rival battles. I do think though that taking Skeledirge is the best option out of the 3 since, like I said, it gives you a special second attacker. But I think the main highlight of the team isn't even the starter, it's that damn Orthworm. No wonder it's a Titan Pokemon. That insane bulk plus that Earth Eater ability and the great typing is pretty much the main factor of why I won certain fights. At the start of the game though, and even at the end when you beat her, Nemona does mention having quite a few Pokemon to make a team though. Maybe this isn't even her final form. If you have any thoughts on what her other Pokemon might be, maybe leave them in the comments down below. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed doing this challenge, and if you really did enjoy it, maybe leave a like and comment down below. And if enough people like it, maybe I'll do another challenge like this. Maybe instead next time I'll use Clavel's or maybe Arven's team, or heaven forbid using Geeta's team. But until next time, bye bye.